Today marks 20 years since the 2002 earthquake was felt here in the capital region. The epicenter was 15 miles outside of Plattsburgh, New York, close enough to make people wonder what just happened. We take a look back on our coverage from that day by opening News Vault 13.
It didn't take long before the phones in our newsroom were ringing off the hook, and then the emails came in. Most people didn't have much trouble figuring out what had happened.
There are no reports of structural damage to any of the
But as he
dams.
spoke this morning at the state's emergency management office, even Governor Pataki said he was taken a little off guard.
I thought, oh, there's one of those rare minor earthquakes, and then it just kept getting stronger and stronger, and more motion in the room, and I said, this is a serious.
The earthquake is quite obvious on the seismograph at the New York State Museum.
Everybody wants to talk about the earthquake.
Museum geologist Dr. Torrey Smith was asleep and missed this morning's initial excitement.
The first tremor I had was the phone ringing with my boss asking me to come in and talk about the earthquakes.
Young Patrick McLaughlin says he knows what the quake felt like.
Thunder.
Others say they had no doubt what it was.
Well, I was laying in bed and I felt a vibration, and I knew right away it probably was an earthquake.
I was still in bed, I think, but I knew immediately what it was. Used to live in Southern California for a short time, so.
Actually, my husband felt it first, and he just popped up out of bed and said, "What was that?" And then I felt it, and I'm maybe 10, 15 seconds, and it wasn't like pictures shaking, but the whole bed was shaking. So.
On a Saturday afternoon, the New York State Museum is normally a pretty busy place no matter what, but after what happened this morning, a lot of people are taking a special interest in this exhibit. Scientists say today's quake probably ranks in the state's top 5 in recorded history.
For New York, this is a big one. This will be the big one of 2002. For San Francisco or Los Angeles, this is a minor irritant.
In Albany, Jennifer Howland, News Channel 13.
The earthquake damaged some chimneys, some road embankments, and caused other minor problems. We've had other earthquakes here in the capital region, too. Back in 1983, homes shook again. That morning, disc jockey Bob McDougall counted hundreds of calls at WTRY. He said his wife called him, saying the quake had scared her and their daughter. Others thought maybe it was the wind or a train going by. Some slept right through it.
I came down this morning and got a beer bottle collection, and all the bottles were knocked off and everything, so I thought somebody broke in. I didn't realize it was an earthquake.
That quake did not cause any major damage, but the most substantial quake that we've seen recently was back in 2011. Our team then, with faces you might recognize, told the story of how that quake shook buildings and sent people home from work.
From WNYT Albany, News Channel 13 live at 5 begins right now.
Now our phones were ringing off the hook with viewers calling from the Berkshires to the Adirondacks, telling us their homes were shaking. Workers fled a number of buildings when they felt the rocking. Sabrina Dami continues our team coverage. She's live in Albany. Sabrina.
Bonita, certainly not as serious here in Albany as it was down in D.C., but still people felt the buildings shake. They were scared. But for one group of people, this was perhaps a different experience because they were 200 feet up in the air working on the roof of the state capitol. Hundreds of people gathered on Washington Avenue. People say the buildings shook and things moved on their desks.
I felt a tremble. Next thing I know, things are sliding on my desk, and the walls were moving, and I said, no, I wasn't waiting for the alarm or anything. I'm one of the fire marshals, and I said, let's go.
Workers evacuated on their own, but for these guys, the trip down the stairs is not as easy.
I was looking at my boss, and we ran down the stairs.
That's a long way to run down.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew Banks was on the roof of the state capitol, part of the crew working on renovations. Alex Brace was also up there.
It just felt like the building was moving back and forth a couple inches, just swaying back and forth. We all kind of just stopped, looked at each other for a second, and was like, did everybody feel that? And everybody's like, yeah.
It lasted about 20 seconds.
We stayed up there, kept doing our job until we got the word from the bosses to get down.
That's dedication.
Yeah, very dedicated. We got to get that paycheck every week.
Over at the state office campus, it was a mass exodus as cars fought to get in front of one another. Hundreds of state workers went home.
I was sitting in the chair, and I just felt like somebody was shaking my chair. And I turned around and looked, and there was nobody there. And then it happened again, and then other people started saying, did you feel that? And I thought the building was coming down. We didn't know what was going on.
And back here in downtown Albany, things have calmed down. It didn't take long for everyone to calm down and realize everything was okay. But the crews working on the roof project here at the Capitol, they're done for the day. Benita, back to you.
Yeah, the things you don't think about being up on a roof like that. Thank you, Sabrina. Governor Cuomo says the state will make sure New York's hydroelectric plants, nuclear power plants, key bridges and tunnels are all safe. So far, they all appear to be fine. There were also no reports of any injuries in New York State. However, the earthquake grounded planes in New York City for a while, and that meant several flight delays here at the Albany International Airport. While no damage was reported, the airport was inspected just to make sure there were no cracks on any of the runways. Amtrak service also slowed between Baltimore and Washington. The earthquake also made it tough for some folks to call and check on their loved ones. Verizon Wireless, Sprint, and AT&T say their networks were congested as the quake sent people scrambling for their phones. It took about 20 minutes before the wireless system was back to normal. So how was what many of us felt here, about 500 miles from the quake's epicenter? Jessica Layton got answers from the experts and continues our team coverage. Jess?
Benita, the geologists at the State Museum figure, based on the reports of shaking and rattling locally, that 5.8 quake in Virginia would probably register between a 4 and a 4.9 in downtown Albany. People inside the State Museum felt that building sway back and forth, a result of that quake along the ancient fault line between Richmond and Charlottesville, Virginia. State geologists say that fault line has been largely inactive for years. Obviously not the case today, and you can see how it registered on the seismometer at the State Museum. But as we've already heard in our coverage today, you don't need a scientist to tell you the earth shook here in the capital region. A lot of you at home have been saying, well, why did I feel it and my friend in the same town or the same street didn't? Or, hey, why didn't I feel this thing at all? A lot of it depends on what you were doing, if you were moving or if you were still, but mostly it's the kind of land that you're on.
If you're on soft sediments, if you're on loose sediments as opposed to hard bedrock, you will tend to feel it because the sediments tend to shake. And the more wet the sediment is, if you were, on old lake clays like here up and down the Hudson Valley, then you would likely feel more shaking.
Now, feeling an earthquake is obviously not something we're used to here in the capital region, and a lot of you have called us to ask, what are we supposed to do when the building I'm in is shaking? More on that and more on an apparent small earthquake in Altamont this morning, coming up on News Channel 13 live at 6. For now, Benita, back to you.
Thank you, Jess. Now, we often don't hear about earthquakes in New York State, but according to the U.S. Geological Survey, they're not uncommon. In 1884, a 5.5 magnitude quake hit the New York City area. In 1944, a 5.8 quake hit Messina, New York area. Then in 1983, a 5.3 quake rattled Blue Mountain Lake. 3 quakes were reported in 2002 in Ausable Forks, Plattsburgh, and Redford. And in June last year, a 5.0 quake centered in Ottawa, Canada, was felt throughout the capital region. To learn more, just log on to WNYT.com, then click on news links. In fact, we've linked to the U.S. Geological Survey website. Moments after the quake hit, you started telling us via our Facebook page what you felt. Here's what some of you are saying. Melody in Queensbury says it made her feel sick to her stomach. She checked to see if it was her washing machine, but she didn't think it was an earthquake. James said it was weird. He looked over at his fish tank in Clifton Park, and the water was moving. And Helen, who used to live in Los Angeles, gives us her perspective, saying while today's earthquake wasn't strong, it was long. Stay with News Channel 13 for continuing coverage of the earthquake, and we will have live reports coming up live at 5:30 and 6. We'll also post information on possible aftershocks on our website at WNYT.com.
We've got plenty of stories to tell as the anniversaries of these events approach. With coverage you can trust, I'm Rachel Tiede, opening News Vault 13.